Hey, I'm making this quick video. I noticed something and I wanted to point this out. It's pretty interesting. I've noticed there's been quite a bit of like science fiction, sci-fi, especially with entertainment lately, especially this big obsession with Game of Thrones, which I don't watch. It's not something that I've ever watched. But also recently, this past weekend, I'm recording this on Monday, April 29th, 2019. It was the release of the movie The Avengers. Um, and that movie, The Avengers, which is, it's like a comic book cinema rendition of the comic book, really kind of blew up and set the record for most, the highest grossing weekend in Hollywood or something. And I just instinctively thought, I wonder what's going on here. So I looked up a couple things. The the limited release of the Avengers was actually last Wednesday, April 24th. Um, that was a couple in I think in the Midwest or something, and then it blew up so much that they launched it nationwide over the weekend, and then by the weekend it was the quickest movie to ever go to 1 billion in gross sales or something like that. So it set all these records. So this is the chart for last Wednesday. Again, you see this says today, but it's actually from April 24th. And you see we have Mercury, Venus in Pisces. Again, Pisces, which is about fantasy and, imagination. But also, again, it's not like about war or about, well, it's kind of war, but it's like comic book. And again, it's a detailed story, and actually the themes of war and of government and of power are also kind of seen in both stories, right? The Avengers are avenging something, of course, against the government or power. I don't really know the story. I'm not going to pretend that I do. I know Game of Thrones is about different leaders or sort of kings trying to win and depose each other. This is the chart for when Game of Thrones first debuted, April 17th, 2011. You can look it up. You can forget the Ascendant in both of these charts. These are just the days. But look at that time with the Game of Thrones. Mars, Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter both all four of them in Pisces, with the Sun in Aries. So we have exalted Sun in both of them. And again, especially in Game of Thrones, it's all about this king trying to overthrow another king and whatnot. And we can also see that in both examples, for example, the moon is much brighter than it is darker. We also have, Jupiter is also important in both. Now here, Jupiter, at the release of Game of Thrones, you could see how many planets were in Pisces, and it was a full moon that day. So you could see this release of Game of Thrones, wherever we would find that first, time zone, it would, and the time that it aired, like, this is a California time, and it's like, it's 1954, which is like 7:50 p.m. Pacific time. But whatever the actual local time and ascendant was, it would be interesting to see. But even aside from that, we can tell just by the way these planets are arranged that it's extremely powerful for like a fantasy series about kings and overthrowing kings and foreign lands and fantasy escape with, dragons and flying creatures and this whole kind of fantastic, that's the sort of Pisces part that's kind of, even like with the Avengers, it's like superheroes, like out of this world, supernatural beings. We see, again, all these planets in Pisces. Saturn is aspecting from Virgo, which is all of the details. And then we got a full moon here, sun, moon, exalted sun in Aries, and the moon here, right? So when you come over to this chart of last week, when Avengers was given a limited release, again, this was the Wednesday. You see we have Mercury, Venus in Pisces, but Jupiter is aspecting pretty close, right? We have a Jupiter aspect onto Pisces. We see the same exalted sun, right? And we have quite a few other planets in Jupiter's signs, right? So again, it's a different flavor for the Avengers films, but there's still a lot of the same themes, especially all the Jupiter themes and the exalted sun, the powerful sun. So I just thought it was interesting. My radar went up because I'm noticing, I notice energy. And I know quite often I will talk about political situations or things that we can notice. I don't do it necessarily because I'm so wrapped up in politics, although I do pay attention to it. I notice it in all kinds of things. And of course, this is this trend with the recent kind of obsession with Game of Thrones. I guess the season started up again or something, and a lot of fascination with that. And with the Avengers movie and the superheroes, flying and Iron Man and all of that, you can see a lot of the same themes, this imagination of Pisces, this power of the sun. Jupiter's in Scorpio, aspecting Pisces here. These are the times right now in 2019. K2 Saturn and the Moon were in Sagittarius during that limited release. And then over the weekend, the Moon was in Aquarius, which also actually shows the culture really, vibing from it. It was in Capricorn and Aquarius. So just an interesting case study, an interesting comparison of similar energies and similar themes. And this is how you can do case studies at times. This is how you can do research, right? And by the way, I think this makes a lot more sense using sidereal as well. I will also say, just in all fairness, this would also have certain resonant themes if you were to move this over to tropical, and a lot of these planets would go into Aries, which can also certainly be seen, especially in the Game of Thrones example, right? Because again, Game of Thrones, it's about kings, and so that theme of overthrowing kings and tyrants and dictators could certainly hold up a lot if you were using a tropical zodiac system. But certainly, I do think that the themes are more resonant with sidereal. We can clearly see all of the fantasy here, and especially the Jupiter influences as ruling Pisces in both cases, also aspecting. And we also see a very bright moon, which has to do with a lot of creativity in general. So anyway, just a quick kind of fun case study. I hope you enjoy it.